So yeah, once again, welcome everyone. It's great to see some new faces as well as recognizing some people we have seen before who are active members of our community. And welcome Anaita as well. So it's our tradition, we go around the room because, again, this is a bit of a community, so we go around the room for introductions. But before we do that, let me give you 30 seconds on, Quantum London is for those who are new. So we're a group of people who are passionate and curious about quantum computing and quantum technologies more in general. And we try to join the dots between the experts in the field and the business people, trying to simplify this complex matter and translate it to business language for business people, trying to investigate what are the business opportunities, challenges, implications for our various industries will be in the next future. We do this in 2-3 ways. We bring in experts and deliver webinars with Q&As, and we do it with, we have run a coding community. So for those who wants to get their hands dirty, we have a couple per month, if I'm not mistaken. Paolo and Anaita can help me here. Also, we have these more informal conversations like the one tonight, where it's really about, bringing people together, bringing in a few topics to discuss, maybe some news we've seen on the internet, and do a bit of expertise sharing and putting our brains together to try to answer some of the questions we might have. Again, it's our tradition to go around the room and do a bit of introduction, maybe just 30 seconds each. What brings you here? What keeps you busy these days? And what you bring to the community. Maybe starting from Rishi.
Hey everyone, my name is Rishi and I'm a research assistant from Chalmers University in Sweden. And I work on quantum algorithms and modeling quantum algorithms using classical frameworks, for example, like tensor networks. And recently, so there is this already existing non-profit organization called Q World, and a few of us are starting like an Indian chapter to it called Q India, and our first workshop is going on. So it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the last one, and now next Friday, Saturday, Sunday too. So that's been keeping me really busy.
Just to understand, what's the intent of Q World and Q India? Is it what's the sort of ultimate aim of it as an association?
Right. So the main aim is to spread quantum computing among students, right? And we do that through programming workshops, hosting lecture series, and so on. And so for example, I think we've had at least a dozen of lecture series so far and more than 51 workshops. So then I say we, but the people from Q World have already conducted materials at different stages. So bronze, silver, I think bronze and silver exist right now. And the bronze material is also aimed at motivated high school students. So it's very introductory. And that's the material that we are covering in this workshop right now.
Cool. It'd be great if you can share links with that either in the chat or later by email. That sounds like a fantastic initiative that we'd love to circulate information about.
Oh yeah, perfect. We'll do that.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going in order as I see people and cameras on my screen. So Brian, you're up next. I know you have a slot later on, but if you want to give us a 30 seconds introduction.
I do. I was thrilled that you guys were willing to let me talk a little bit about my next book. But my background is as a North American banker. I had teams in New Jersey in the US and in Toronto in Canada. And I had a lot of work to do with machine learning, with big data and financial crimes and fraud management. And then I transitioned into writing books about AI and consulting on artificial intelligence, and a few years ago started to see the upswell around quantum computing and thought that would be interesting to get into. And so maybe you're going to give me some time at the end to talk about my new project. So I'd love to leave that until the end.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you very much, Brian.
Welcome.
we were joking earlier with Paul is kind of becoming a regular. So Paul.
Hi everybody. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I guess I always describe myself as doing startup ecosystem stuff. So I think my long-term plan with Quantum would be to run a quantum accelerator program, probably as a short-term interim step, some kind of quantum boot camp. And because my accelerators I'm running at the moment are in AI drug discovery, I would quite like to explore with some specialists the idea of doing a kind of venture build around quantum drug discovery. So there's those three things: boot camps, accelerator, and maybe doing a small startup. I'll leave my link in the LinkedIn.
Great, thank you. And you're based in London?
I'm based in London, yeah.
Great. Fred, hello.
Hi there. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Hi.
Yeah, so I'm Fred Smith. I've been a few times before, but very short. 25 years ago, graduated in theoretical physics and the classical computational physics. Loved it, but you couldn't really do anything practical. So I went into business and I've been there all along. And now it's just great to see that it's coming back. I always thought, quantum is kind of, if there's magic, it's quantum really. And we can now do these kind of magical things. So I'm very interested in what's developing, and wherever I can help, keen to do so.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Peter Neal.
Sure, yeah, I'm a software engineer based in London. I had an interest in quantum computing back in the late 90s when I did my undergraduate degree in physics. And again, yeah, there wasn't much you could really do with it back then. So I'm getting interested now that, well, now it's accessible to people. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Paolo, I think you are up next.
Oh, hi all. Paolo Cuomo, co-founder along with of Quantum London. My interest has always been how evolving technologies can impact industries that are maybe behind the curve on that particular technology. And I've done that in various places, and obviously, as we all know, and as some of you have already said, that quantum computing is now starting to come of age. So the aim of what we set up here, as introduced at the beginning, is to see whether we can get a group of like-minded individuals talking about the impact of this. I work in the insurance sector, so I'm keen and interested in use case insurance, but I don't think that that's at the cutting edge of where quantum will bring business value. So frankly, that's of secondary importance compared to those industries where it will make a difference. So really excited that the community is continuing to grow.
Thank you. Thanks, Paolo. Paul Lipman, over to you.
Yeah, so I'm accent notwithstanding based in the San Francisco Bay area. I've been leading cybersecurity companies for much of the last 20 years, was a physics undergrad some 30 years ago. I've always maintained an interest in the subject, kind of retaught myself quantum mechanics a few years ago, and then over the last year I've been learning to program with Qiskit, and just sold my last company. I'm currently advising a couple of private equity firms that are evaluating investments in the quantum ecosystem.
Thank you. Mark, hello, welcome.
Hi, hello.
Hello.
Yeah, my name is Mark Peason. I'm there we go. I'm based in Waterloo, Ontario, and I'm basically retired. But I've been a board member of the Institute for Quantum Computing for about 17, 18 years, and right now one of my retirement efforts is I'm helping to run the Quantum Valley Ideas Lab. We're working on quantum radio frequency sensors, Rydberg atoms, basically, and I was asked by European Telecommunications Standards Institute to put together a group on quantum sensors. So I've worked with those people since the late 80s when they were founded. I was one of the people who wrote a lot of the standards for GSM and 3G and 4G wireless. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anahita.
Hi everyone, I'm Anahita. I'm a graduate in the insurance industry. I studied physics at university, and so I've got a keen interest in seeing how technology can bring about change in this industry. I had the opportunity to work on a report whilst I was at Lloyd's about the impacts of quantum computing and insurance, and this is what kind of introduced me to the group, and ever since been really keen to see where this technology is going to go and what it can bring about. Just to mention that there's also a talk at Lloyd's this Thursday about the impacts of quantum computing on insurance, which I'm sure we can put the link in the chat if anyone's interested in coming along.
Yes, please. That would be great to share. That should be an interesting one. With a few speakers we hosted on the webinars before, so it should be a really good one. Thank you, Anahita. Raja Gopal, hope I pronounce it properly.
Yeah, that's great. You can call me Raja. I'm a professor of computer science at Middlesex University in London. So traditionally, I'd been working on programming languages and proving correctness of programs, security of programs. But for the last 15 years or so, I've been working on quantum computing. Again, the angle is to programming languages or prove correctness and security of systems. So that's my focus. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Gottfried. We're just going around the room to do a bit of introduction. Feel free to say a couple of words about yourself. Don't feel obliged if you don't want to. No worries. So I will move on to Ivan. Nope. No worries. Next we have Anuj.
Hi, this is Anuj here. So I'm based in India, and along with actually Rishi, I'm also like a part of, I would say I am part of actually the keyword Indian chapter Q India. And my background is actually from computer science, and mainly I have experience of approximately more than 20 years in system integration. And because of my interest in linear algebra at the graduation level, and mainly again like attraction towards this quantum computing since last 1.5 years, I've been much more working. I switched over from my actual job towards a startup, and we have been exploring some of the applications, commercial application of the quantum computing, where our main domain is actually like manufacturing sector. So a club of a combination of quantum computing plus industry 4.0 technologies. That is what we have been exploring.
Thank you very much. Neil Fennelly. Hello, welcome.
Hi, yes, I'm an actuary by background. As the accent probably suggests, based in Dublin, formerly London. Been involved in a few different technology projects in the insurance sector. Like Paolo said, insurance probably won't be at the forefront of quantum computing. It can be slow to adopt change, but I came across Anahita's report, and I'm interested to see where the group goes.
Great, thank you very much. George? Hello and welcome.
Oh, hi. Yes, I'm actually a retired software engineer, and I'm majored in mathematics, pure math, 40 years ago in college. And I'm just now realizing that a lot of this quantum stuff is really nothing but linear algebra and functional analysis with a little Lie groups. So I'm taking a free course in quantum formalism that's offered by the Zaiku group, and having a lot of fun learning the physics and translating it into math that I know. So I'm really just here as an observer.
Great, thank you very much for being here. now Zoom has mixed up all the tiles, so I will have to try to remember who spoke already, if not. Anuj, I think you did speak already, didn't you, Anuj? If not,
I did. Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. And then Robert.
Yeah, hi there. Hi, Rob from Ipswich in the UK. So I've got about 20 years of software engineering programming experience in telecommunications. So we do like charging software for a lot of the tier 1 mobile operators out there. And I'm here because I'm interested in quantum computing. I'm quite new to the field, so I'm just trying to learn the basics through some of these free courses that are around in Udemy and places like that. So yeah, I'm especially interested in quantum circuits from my electronics days, and also how quantum computing can be applied to telecommunications in general, especially like quantum key distribution and areas like that. So.
Great, thank you.
Rob, it's always interesting to hear from people who are doing some of these courses about ones they think are particularly good. So if there's any that have stood out, whether they're free or to pay for, do feel free to share those in the chat now or at a future date. That'd be great.
I will do. I'm really starting off from the basics again. I mean, I went over a lot of the basics implicitly at university, but that was decades ago. So I'm doing it again. So yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah, Usama.
Oh, hello everyone. Are you listening?
Yep.
Yeah. I am Usama from Pakistan, and I am actually an undergrad student in computer science. And a couple of months ago, I heard about quantum computing, and I decided to research about this, and I found your group on Meetup. So here I am. I am actually very newbie to quantum computing, and yes.
Great, thank you so much. Faye.
Yeah, can you hear me? Is there any echo? Hi, that's great. Yeah, I'm US based, and I was like particularly in the life science and healthcare this sector, and then I'm looking for solutions for big data actually, especially for genomics. And then later on, I encountered this quantum concept and see, well, probably that will be the future that in terms of the speed up the computation, and also yeah, some other aspect as well. So that's why I'm here and learning more about it. I have been in this field for more than 2 years, a little bit. Yeah, that's about me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jude B.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, so I'm Jude. I work nominally as a data scientist. My background's in physics, so my interest in quantum computing for the practical kind of quantum advantage, but another part just to rediscover my love for quantum physics.
Great, thank you very much. Per Lind. Hello, welcome.
I think I'm unmuted now. I'm Per. I'm a co-founder of Teridion Quantum Computing, which is based in England and Germany. We're focusing on quantum simulation at the point, because we don't have, and me and Scott, my co-founder, we're both old IBMers, long time, and we don't, the roadmap that IBM just came out with, we just don't believe the hardware side of it. It's not going to happen the way that they put in the roadmap. So I'm just here to enlighten people about what we're doing on the software side and the emulation side.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Francisco left his introduction in the chat. Is multitasking, is based in it works in machine learning, and is interested in applications of machine learning, quantum computing with machine learning. And that leaves us with Vinod and then Craig. So Vinod, over to you.
Hi, my name is Vinod, and I am currently
an entrepreneur having a startup on AI, but I'm also more interested towards the happenings in the quantum ecosystem, and I would like to know more about it. That's the reason why I'm here.
Thank you very much. And finally, another regular, Craig. Hello, welcome. You might be on mute, Craig. Oh, we do know you, so we can skip you.
Just made it, sorry. Yep, I had a bit of a problem. Good evening, everybody, or good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. I'm Craig. I'm a managing partner at Lime Street Digital Partners, and we advise tech companies and the insurance industry on strategy and execution of digital projects. And by background, I'm a loss adjuster, working at the highest end of the claim spectrum on major losses. So I have a very distinct point of view with respect to the things that can go wrong and what happens when things go wrong and who pays. So that's my angle, and nice to meet so many new people here today.
Thank you. Thanks, Craig. And that wraps up the introduction. I think it was helpful for everyone. It's a great mix of people, technical people, business people. So that's what we like about our community. So what we do is normally start looking back at the most recent webinars and share some thoughts. We had a couple recently. There was one from ID Quantique, and there was one from around the patenting of quantum technologies. I don't know, Paolo, maybe you have some starting thoughts or provoking questions we can kick off with?
Yeah, so just briefly on the Venner Shipley one, which was the one that happened at the start of January, which I know a number of you attended. They're patent attorneys in London. And I just wondered if, if anyone who joined had thoughts. I guess I was pleased in terms of some of the questions. It was clearly proving a useful presentation to a lot of the audience, but at the same time, it worried me a little bit that given the value and importance of appropriate patenting, whether everyone, the number of people who kind of weren't aware and were asking almost basic questions. So I don't know whether any of you here have views on if there's a real risk around people who have some really good ideas and working hard in startups and stuff, maybe not protecting themselves appropriately. Anyone have thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is Paul. I'll jump in. I mean, my experience in having worked in the startup world for many years, it may well be that individual entrepreneurs are not aware of the need for applying for patents. I mean, you tend as an entrepreneur to kind of view patents as an evil, especially if you've been on the end of a patent suit, as I have. Because there are, certainly in my industry in cybersecurity, a number of patent trolls who do nothing but acquire patents for the purpose of extracting essentially ransoms from them. But that being said, any startup with professional venture investors, the venture investors will understand the need for IP protection, the value of IP protection, and typically will make allowances to spend on the legal fees necessary to protect core IP. So I think it would be unlikely to find a venture-backed startup that's not thinking through the IP protection issues.
Brilliant, thank you, Paul. Mark, you have a comment?
Yeah, I've been involved in patenting and IP for a long time. I've been in the industry, in the wireless industry, for over 40 years now. I'm retired, but today patents are used a little bit differently for small companies than large companies. Large companies, like when I worked for Motorola, we would trade these. We were always getting sued or suing somebody else, and we would trade parts of our portfolios against another company or competitor's portfolio. Small companies use the patents more as a currency to protect their IP, but also it affects your valuation. But you have to be very careful with your filings, and of course where you file as well. But I've done a lot of due diligence for venture firms over the years, and one of the questions is, of course, do they have IP? Do they have patents? Are they issued? Are they what's in prosecution, and so on and so forth. So patents are very important. So that's all. It's a quick comment.
So those two comments I think are both very useful, and let me try and sum it up and tell me if I'm getting this wrong. Essentially, if you're an entrepreneur, then the venture capital stage when you're getting your first round of funding is critical on the patent side from 2 points of view. One is they're looking at that as part of the valuation calculations, and the other is if they do choose to put money behind you, then one of the things they're bringing is the experience of saying how should you protect what you have going forward. So I guess if I look at my my days of startups in InsurTech, there are a lot of what I don't mean this offensively, but I sort of call them very amateur entrepreneurs. I.e., there were people with an idea, but frankly didn't have a clue on how to do anything but that idea. And I don't have a sense yet in terms of in the quantum space whether the entrepreneurs are sort of equally naive because they're just focused in their area, or the fact that you could sort of maybe create an InsurTech startup with nothing but an idea and an internet connection, whilst in the quantum space, obviously if you're doing anything in the hardware space, it's it's clearly a bigger endeavor. And even in the software space, my sense is that that the entrepreneurs aren't quite so much sort of making up as they go along. And I wonder if you have thoughts on that. And also, Craig, I don't know if you're able to talk, but you've obviously seen the InsurTech space as it's grown, plus the quantum space, whether you think they're comparable or not.
I think on the IP side, as far as insurance, it's really just around brand. Business ideas are a little harder to get patents on and protect the IP on. There's a good forum for those that are interested within Tech UK, which works with the UK Patent Office, both on the fast track and the long track programs. And anyone that's thinking of exploring those ideas with a particular novelty piece of technology would go that way. But typically in the insurance and InsurTech space, we don't see very much of that at all. It's really just about brand and identity.
Can I interject here?
Sure, Per.
So as a 6-year-old startup, we're considering filing patents, but filing patents leaves you very vulnerable to the likes of Google, IBM, Amazon, whoever is in the game. So we've taken the stance now that me and Scott, my co-founder, that we're not going to file a patent just yet, because that would make us very vulnerable for the algorithms that we're working on, and this is purely software side. On the hardware side, we have some different things that we're working on quantum memory and stuff like that, which cannot be approached by anybody because that is sovereign technology. But we just, you don't pull your pants down and let everybody look at your things. Once you do that, you have 20,000 companies all over the world scouring this. Somebody was talking about patent trolls. Once they get into this, it could be all over for startups. So I just, this is from a startup actually thinking about, should we have a patent? Should we file a patent? If you file a patent here in Europe, you have to disclose everything. So the patent attorneys in the European Patent Agency can see, are you offending anybody else with other patents? And then you open yourself up for a ballistic time for these patent trolls to just have a time with you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Per. I think that's a challenge we're obviously seeing in a lot of places, in a lot of industries, and I guess it'll be interesting to watch how that works. Hopefully it works for you, and that we're not sitting here in a call in 3 years' time where you're saying that somehow came to bite you. So good luck with it.
Yeah, I mean, the flip side of that, certainly in the US, I can't really speak so much to Europe, is if you commercialize an invention, then you start the clock running to file a patent. So if you commercialize your invention, you have it out in the market and you wait, I believe it's more than a year, you then can't file a patent. Now, that can prevent others from filing patents because you can claim prior art, but nevertheless, I mean, my recommendation, if anyone here is kind of thinking of doing this, I'm certainly happy to recommend an excellent patent lawyer that I've used over many years, based in the US, but deals with patents internationally. First thing I would suggest is sit down with a lawyer who's dealt with this and specializes in this, because it is a complex area and there are multiple considerations, as Per rightly points out.
Fantastic, thank you, Paul. Any other points on this particular topic? Else we'll talk about the ID Quantique session. No. Okay, thanks. So ID Quantique, again, I know some of you joined. I think it was just a week or so ago now. All these evenings blur into one, but it was relatively recently. They were talking about this sort of classic quantum versus quantum story, the quantum computer creating an offensive weapon to decrypt data, whilst other quantum technologies creating superior defenses. And I think I like this a lot for a number of reasons. One, I think it's forcing a clarity in a lot of our minds that the word quantum and technology and quantum computing are not synonymous. There's a lot of people getting into this space who just sort of presume they're one and the same thing, and that the sort of quantum communications, quantum key distribution, etc., are some sort of geeky thing that's irrelevant, and actually the quantum computing bit's the only bit that's actually of business importance. And this, I think, is forcing people to realize that it's much more nuanced than that. I also think, as I believe we will discover on Thursday in the session that Anna is chairing, that this topic is making it much more timely for business leaders, because it's very easy for most business leaders to say, right, look, come back to us when there's a quantum computer that can actually start to run some useful algorithms, and then we'll work out how it fits into our company and our industry. But if you're saying the concept of harvest today, decrypt tomorrow attacks means that you need to be protecting your data now, because if it's got a shelf life of more than 5, 8, 10 years, then that data is vulnerable, brings it very much to the fore. And whilst I never want to be driving people's interest in a technology through scaremongering, I do believe that it drives a useful conversation. So anyone have thoughts on that? Is the whole harvest today, decrypt tomorrow risk overhyped, or actually is it a good basis for getting people to realize they need to be caring about this technology now? Peter, go for it.
The basic problem of harvest today for decrypt tomorrow, that's a generic problem that's independent of whether quantum supremacy comes along. We don't know what attacks are going to come up on our encryption. We have presumptions made about the correctness of them against current standards, but that assumes everything is implemented properly and so on and so on. So it's something I think everyone should be aware of, moving forward as fast as they can on their own defense.
It's a race, right?
Yeah.
The good side, the bad versus the bad. So you need to keep running, I suppose.
No, but I think we need to on the security side, we need to stay ahead of the bad guys, right? And that's the reason I got involved in quantum algorithms about 6 years ago. So you have this scaremongering, and I'm not talking about anybody specific here, but you have the scaremongering that somebody came out with a claim the other week. we get quantum computing, we can peel back the onion of Bitcoin and steal all the Bitcoins. No, you can't. And because you don't have enough money, that would cost you billions of dollars to do that in even processing power. We don't have the technology yet, but we have on the quantum security side. If we make the right decisions to move away from the 256 and all the other protocols that are, or make them better, quantumize them, then we're ahead of the bad guys, right? And I think that's what we need to look at. We don't need to look at the scaremongering that everybody wants to peel back the onion of 256. I think Scott can write an algorithm right now that if he has enough information about you, like any other hacker, that's what they're doing. But they're using analog computers mostly because they can't afford the quantum stuff. And fortunately, we don't have the quantum hardware that can do any of this. So that's my 10 cents, that we just need to focus on being ahead, not on. It's not a defensive game. It's an aggressive game from our side on the quantum. We need to better our technologies and make sure that they're more secure than what we had before.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. Raj has a point to make.
Yeah, I mean, we are already doing that with quantum cryptography, quantum key distribution, and also classical techniques using post-quantum cryptography, right? So those are ways we are kind of trying to stay ahead of the game. And the other point I wanted to make is quantum computers, once you have a good fault-tolerant quantum computer, which may not be that far away, then you can break everything, not at that time, but people are already, could be storing secret information, and then they can break it later once they have this fault-tolerant computer, right? So even Bitcoin is in danger, right? So if you can break blockchain, you can steal Bitcoins. So I think that can happen, and I think with quantum cryptography and post-quantum cryptography, you have techniques to try and stay ahead. That's what I would say.
Okay, thank you. Mark, did you raise your hand? Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick thing. I was the chairman for a little over 5 years of the Quantum Safe Cryptography Group of the European Telecommunications Standards Institute recently, and I just stepped down last year, actually. And I've learned a lot of interesting things about post-quantum cryptography. First of all, ECC and RSA are the two public key cryptographic techniques that are at risk from quantum computers. AES-256, all the symmetric key stuff is really not. That should be good, at least according to the analyses that our colleagues have done for another at least 100 years or so. But here's another interesting observation. There's 5 basic groups of algorithms that are deemed to be quantum safe. Now, cryptographers don't work very quickly with adoption. They like to be sure that they know what they're doing before they start deploying things. There's one thing to say that quantum computers can attack conventional RSA and ECC. ECC, by the way, elliptic curve crypto, that's used in wireless because the keys are small. But the other aspect, and why it's important to work on quantum safe cryptos, because ECC and RSA are both aging crypto systems, and they have been broken by conventional computers. Stochastic primes. Cryptographers will tell you this, that they just try these numbers that are 99.88% or something probable being a prime, and they try to make keys out of them, and some of them work. So it's not just quantum computers. That's the problem. So anyway, that's just interesting learning.
Thank you, Mark. The very useful insight. Any final thoughts, Fred? Fred, then Brian, and then I think we'll close this topic and move on. Fred.
Sure, yeah, thanks. No, I'm completely not involved in cybersecurity. I know the concepts of quantum key distribution, all that. I was quite impressed by them, and it seems, and this is why it's more of a question, it seems to have a kind of development product line of random number generators and stuff like that. Do they make money? Because to me, that's kind of like a key, an interesting thing to know, because there's probably very few companies at the moment that actually are able to make money out of quantum technology. And if they're one, that is impressive, right? And it seems that they have something there, at least, whether, you know, it's in the end going to be used. If people want it, then it's a product, right?
Nope, fair point, Fred. Thank you. Brian.
Yeah, so when I was listening to Jean-Sebastien and Bruno, you know, they were talking about traditional security and quantum security, not necessarily being mutually exclusive, but actually sort of layering on, you know, quantum security, QKD capabilities. And it'll be interesting to see if that actually comes to fruition or not.
Yeah, and what do you have a view yet, or as you say, it's just be interested to see how it plays out?
Well, I think it comes back to somewhat of what some of the other folks have talked about, is the hesitancy to make a change on some maybe unproven capabilities. And so, you know, maybe that layering effect may be more sellable, you know, going forward. But it'll be, you know, that's from my business perspective, would be a main criteria before entering into that space, even if you're seeing it being done by other companies.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. Good. Okay. Well, so let's close that out. Looking forward, there's a number of other events coming up. One that will be particularly interesting in terms of the webinar is a little bit more around the UK quantum computer. So that's happening in March. More details of that soon. What would be great now would be Anna, if you and Jude could give us just a few minutes on the coding community, and then we'll hand over to Brian.
Yeah, sure. Who would like to go? Who would like to...
Jude, why don't you give us some context, and then maybe Anna can share some thoughts as a learner in the session.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so for context, for the last few fortnights, we've been trying to form a kind of a self-teaching group for operating on IBM's Qiskit Python API. We usually get something around 20 to 30 people in a session. It's largely focused around the Qiskit textbook, which is online. So we've largely been kind of operating in two streams. We're iterating our setup to see what's successful and what's not. A kind of a beginner stream and more of an intermediate stream. I suppose probably this is a good opportunity for Anahita to talk about how the beginner stream is working, because that's what you're overseeing.
Yeah, thanks, Jude. So thanks to Anuj, who's on the call. He's been leading the beginner session for the last 2 weeks now. And I think that's been a fantastic way of doing it, because as someone who is a complete beginner, and I find going through the Qiskit textbook quite difficult, and not really understanding all of it, and also, you know, sometimes, you know, when you don't have the time and all, when Anuj goes through the chapter in quite a detailed way, it's great to supplement that learning. And I think if we have speakers like Anuj leading each week, and then the beginners can kind of chip in, and when they feel more confident to ask questions, they can hopefully be contributing more. So I'm looking at some point understanding enough that I can ask intelligent questions, because I think at the moment in those rooms it's very quiet, but understandably everyone's still trying to almost learn a bit through osmosis. So that's from the beginner room. I don't know much about what's going on in the advanced stream. I know that in the first week, they kind of got on with it themselves and the conversation happened very organically. But how did that go last week, Jude?
Yeah, absolutely. So the other room, the ethos is more kind of people go away, do their own thing with the textbook, come back, and then chat through, you know, their observations or any problems they've had, and so forth. I think one of the outcomes from last week was a slight divergence away from the textbook, which is more towards looking at the IBM Qiskit challenge and some of the solutions that were presented on that. And I think the reasoning behind that is that, on this challenge, IBM have a scoring metric, which is presumably, closer to how you might actually want to score your own work if you're developing as a quote unquote quantum software engineer. I think one other observation I'd like to make as well actually is that I think every once a fortnight we tend to get a question on other vendors, which is perfectly reasonable if you're interested in using a Microsoft vendor and so forth. The IBM offering was chosen principally because they have this open textbook and also it's written in Python, which is a little bit easier to get into than other languages. But I think it does open the question of, at some point, will it be worthwhile pivoting into a more vendor agnostic framework? And I think that has value in terms of, if you were trying to build a team of quantum engineers going forward, how would you position your skill set that you're looking for? So.
Interestingly, the IBM quantum development roadmap that they put out, I think it was last week or so, mentioned that they, going forward, want to sort of make it easier for developers from all sorts of backgrounds to get to grips with it, which is a great announcement in my opinion.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. It's really great how out of nothing you've created this momentum on this. So Jude, thanks for driving this. Anna as well. Anuj, thanks for your contribution. So that's absolutely great. Just before we hand over to Brian and Per, tell me if this is not practical, but can you in 3 sentences or fewer just summarize your skepticism about IBM's roadmap if you're happy to do that?
Yeah, sure. We don't the physics right now as we see it are not there, so it's physically impossible. I think Bob came out on LinkedIn and said and I don't think it's mentioned in the roadmap, but he actually came out and made some positions that they will have a 10,000 qubit hardware by end of 2022, and I just don't see it. And is it operational? I mean, I can do 10,000 qubits right now. I can simulate that, but is it resistant for all the different things that we're looking at on the quantum side, interference and all the things that makes it not work, or let me restate that, make it not really reliable.
Yeah. Your point is good, and I think whilst I'm not sure Quantum London quite has the clout yet to get any senior IBMers on, though we had a great talk from Andy Strauss-Clark last year. I'd be keen to see that debate play out, so we will see if we can somehow work out a way of having that conversation in public. Rishi, a quick point from you, then we'll hand over to Brian.
Yeah, I was just curious. So Burr was saying that you can simulate 10,000 qubits. So yeah, if you could maybe elaborate on that. But if there is no time, that is fine, because my work is on classical simulation of quantum systems, and I'm struggling here with 60 qubits. So it's
well, there we go. There's the connect. We love making connections. Per and Rishi, phone call tomorrow. Work it out.
There we go. There we go. I'll set up a call with my co-founder Scott. He can take you into that realm.
That'd be nice. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks. Em, over to you and Brian.
Yes, just very quickly. I mean, we introduced Brian earlier, but is about to publish a piece of work on quantum, so business implication of quantum computing, which is very topical for us. And we asked him to kindly share a bit about the work is about to be published, give us some insights and early previews on the topics which are going to be covered as part of this book. Brian, over to you.
Thanks. So thanks very much for the time. Just by way of introduction, I'm a former executive of the top 10 North American bank, university instructor. I consult to both large corporates and small scaling companies. More traditionally in the past about artificial intelligence, and certainly what I found part of the reason why I've been writing this book is that in my experience with AI, business leaders tried to implement artificial intelligence just like any other technology, and the majority of those projects failed. And you've got the black box, job insecurity, bias, hype. They were all part of the AI reality. And the interesting reality about quantum computing is that it just seems to be maturing faster than AI. A lot of investment going into it. So business leaders really need to be prepared for that kind of complex technology and the considerations that go into it. Why do I think there's an audience for this? Because of what we were talking about today. If you look at some of the recent headlines, business leaders are seeing these things and they're saying to their technology teams, why don't we have a strategy or a first scaling project around quantum computing? So you think about Amazon's chief technology officer who predicts that quantum will blossom in 2021. That's part of the Quantum Daily. The conversation we've been having around IBM's quantum software roadmap, which it says points to a massive speed up, accomplishing in a day what once took months. Now that's really interesting to a business leader, but it might be a lot of hype. You think about that 10,000 qubit question. You look at the Canadian company D-Wave that has its new 2000 Q hardware, but it's really a quantum annealing computer as opposed to a larger, broader environment where it really focuses on optimization. You've got SpinQ, which that desktop quantum computer that costs less than $5,000. Now it's really meant for schools, but somebody seeing that headline says to themselves, well, I can do that. I'd like a quantum computer on my desktop. So, you're looking at these various different approaches from company leaders who are saying, how can I get involved in this? But by the way, what is quantum computing? And so, we're seeing a lot today in the global arena, talking about growing a standards-based quantum community, making quantum more widely available to diverse groups of users, providing learning opportunities, just like we talked about here, combining classical and quantum technologies, and how do you do that? Broadening the various use case applications. I've written a number of articles on various different use cases from finance to healthcare, and so they are broadening. Increasing the number and the kind of developers that are out there. What's available in open source, what's happening with cloud native deployment, security challenges like ID Quantique provided us some insights on, and quantum ethics. People are starting to talk about that in terms of bias, accuracy, responsibility, sustainability. When I attended the Q2B 2020 session in December, they had twice as many participants as the previous year, and a lot of vendors talking about their applications. So certainly there's question marks around the maturity of these quantum solutions, but business leaders are starting to look at them and saying, okay, what do we do next? So to that, I'm writing a book called Quantum Boost, using quantum computing to supercharge your business. And what we'll be doing with Quantum London is some special promotions around that. 3 opportunities, actually. If you're familiar with book publishing, there's something called an advanced reader copy. And what the author does is shares that advanced reader copy with certain people for them to read it and review it and publish a review. And of course, you get a free copy of the book that way. We'll be offering pre-orders at a discount price for Quantum London members. And then finally, some special offers that we co-designed between Anita and Paolo and Em and myself going forward. So the book is due to come out in May 2021. And I'm really looking forward to, continuing to attend the Quantum London sessions so that I can learn a little bit more about what you're thinking about, and where possible, include that in the book. Em, back to you.
Great, thank you. Clearly, we'll be sharing more details with our usual channels. George, I think you raised your hand really quickly.
Yes, I wanted to be sorry to throw a damper on Google and NASA's quantum supremacy announcement, but it's not clear to me how many effective fault-tolerant qubits, logical qubits, they got out of 53 physical qubits. My guess is between 5 and 7, just a minor bit of cold water.
And George is right. I mean, they keep talking about supremacy and advantage in the media, and it's hard to understand really what to believe.
And I think thank you, Brian, thank you, George. It's one of, if we think about executive education, so to speak, one of the points we need to help is, a few years back we saw the nice sort of linear graphs of number of qubits, and it all straightforward. Now, as it's becoming, much more of a game of propaganda and sales rather than sort of pure research, people are going to play with these numbers in a way to outdo each other. So we need to be able to educate that 1,000 qubits does not necessarily mean 1,000 qubits in the way that someone else may be measuring 100 qubits. So I see a real role for those of us who understand the technology enough to keep people honest. So thank you for that, George.
And Paolo, when
we need to unhype it. Sorry for interrupting.
Go ahead, Per.
Absolutely.
Brian, you, I think.
Okay, I'll just go quickly, but to your point, it's important that Quantum London and other groups do that, because over 80% of companies are actually thinking about use cases for quantum.
And can I just remove the hype? I think that's also key. I've been having conversation in my company with senior guy this week, and that's just another hype. We need to help people navigate that side of things as well.
Can I just interject here? If you look at artificial intelligence, which has been so overhyped for the last 6-7 years, if you look at some of the statements and just look at, is there really any artificial intelligence out there that is usable at the moment? And my position is no. So we're doing quantum assisted machine learning, not artificial intelligence. And that if you look at Teridian.com, our website, artificial intelligence does not come into our vocabulary because it doesn't exist. So we have to be very careful with, and also coming back to some of the statements here, that quantum is not one thing. Quantum is many things. Quantum is the universe. So I can pick a lot of different things that I can be working on, like with quantum cryptography and stuff like that. That doesn't have anything to do with the hardware side. That is completely different. So we need to get a clear understanding in the community what we're talking about, and the simulation, as I said on a previous podcast. The simulation is a good way to get an understanding for what we're actually working towards and what's possible and what's not. Sorry for interrupting.
Oh, no, that's good. Okay, cool. Sorry, Em, I thought you were sharing your email with us. That was going to be exciting.
I think it's about time to wrap up, so I could.
Yeah, do you have, does Anna have 30 seconds just to talk a little bit more about Thursday?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so on Thursday, Lloyd's of London, which is the insurance marketplace, in collaboration with Quantum London, are putting on an event about quantum computing and its impacts on insurance. And the whole point of this event is really to introduce quantum computing to the insurance world and start the discussion around the impacts of it, both in terms of how can we make use of the great benefits it's going to have, but also really focusing on that cyber risk that it could pose, because in the insurance industry, that could be something that's quite worrying for cyber underwriters. And so the event will also be having some great speakers. We'll have Paul Guthrie, who is at Envelope Risk right now, and which is a cyber underwriter, and he was also the co-founder of QX Branch. We've got Mark Jackson from Cambridge Quantum Computing, Mitchell Wayne from Novarica, who are a insurance consultancy, and he's also authored a report on quantum computing and its impacts on insurance, and also Professor Michaela Mosca, who's a co-founder of Evolution Q and a professor at the University of Waterloo. So it's a great panel. I'm sure it'll generate more questions than it can answer, but it's a good conversation starter in the insurance space. So yeah, make sure to sign up and come along.
Thank you. I think that wraps it up. Once again, thank you very much for participating. Interesting, exciting conversation here. Very insightful for me personally. I'm sure you feel the same. And we will be following up on the various links we shared, and the video will be part of this session. Will be published as well. So to our usual channels, you can also see on the screen. We'll be following up with the group. Thanks everyone again for the great conversation tonight, and looking forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you.
Thanks all. Goodbye. Good night.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thanks, Paul.